And welcome back. As we continue working on our new game here, let's go ahead and get ready to do that elusive thing, which is paint texture. But before we can do that, of course, we need to get some palettes that we can actually use. And for this, we're actually going to come back to our package manager to do that. So let's go back to our package management. And while I'm on terrain here, if you don't have it, you can, of course, search that again. You can see this button here that says download asset samples from asset store. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. And that'll take me out here to the terrain sample asset pack, which is of course going to have a lot of different things that are already built in by Unity technology. So all I need to do is click on add to my assets and that will take care of that. All right, and once that is taken care of, I can now download that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that download button there, which will get the terrain sample asset pack downloading. And then from matter there, once it's finished downloading, I can just import that directly into my project. All right, so download is complete. So I'm going to go ahead and click on import. Now, if you get this warning, it's just saying, hey, do you want to have these dependencies? Yeah, we're going to go ahead and install and upgrade those. And then it's going to go ahead and take care of those for us. And then once those dependencies are done, we are going to, of course, be ready to move on to the next step. All right, and so now that's done importing, I'm just going to ignore this because this came right from Unity technology. So I'm just going to close that warning. And we're going to actually go ahead and import this whole thing. You'll notice there's a new folder that it added, which is okay. We're just going to go ahead and leave that there for now. So let's go ahead and import that. That might just take a little bit of time to import all those assets. All right, and so now that that's finished, let's do a little bit of cleanup here in our assets. So I'm just going to close my package manager for now. And so we have, of course, have this resources here. I'm just going to drag those into settings just to get those out of the way. And this terrain sample folder, let's actually create a new folder here. And we're just going to call this our imported assets. And that's just so we can kind of keep things organized. I'm just going to move that in there. And so that way everything that is in here, whether it's textures, materials, whatever, can all be here. And so if we bring in other imported assets, we can then just move them here in this folder. So we always can reference that, hey, anything that was imported outside of the start of this package is available for us. Just because things are going to get quite large quite fast. All right, and so now we're ready to actually go ahead and start painting terrain. So let's go ahead and click on our terrain here. Notice I can't do them all at once because it says multi-object editing is not supported here. So we're going to have to do this individually, which is fine. I'm just going to go to my first terrain here. And what I'm going to do here to start is actually approach this maybe one at a time. And so let's go down to our paint texture, scroll down to our layer palette, and we want to actually add a layer here. And if we click on this select terrain layer, I'm actually going to try to expand this out here just so we can see these a little bit more. You can see, of course, that we have a couple different options in here. And to get started, we are probably going to use a grass layer. So let's just go ahead and pick a grass layer. So we have grass A, grass B, D, etc. I think I'm going to just use grass B here. And you can see when I put that in there, it's right now just kind of there. All right, and you start scrolling, it starts going crazy. In fact, even if I go to my other layers and I add in, let's just say grass B here to these other terrains, one of the things you'll notice is that no matter what, it still kind of has that same feel to it. And that's just because that's just how that is being put in. I'm going to hold off adding it to the other ones just for a second. Now the reason why I paused is because I want to actually go ahead and open up the layer properties here. And this is where we're going to see our tiling settings. And you look right now, my size is set 1 to 1. And that's why we get this kind of very greenish uniform, kind of pukey thing going on here. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to change, let's go to something more like, let's say 25 by 25. And so now when I do that, let me just go back up here to my first texture. In fact, actually, let's go back to our first texture that's right here. So 25 by 25. And so you can see that 25 by 25 is now carried over. And when I've done that, and so let me just add a new layer here with this same one. So grass B, you can see we get that 25 by 25 texture. And if I zoom in on this grass is looking a little bit more, we got a little bit more looks like feel to it. In fact, if I change this texture, let's just say I don't want to use grass layer B here anymore. Let's just go ahead and remove this just for a second. I'm going to actually back to my main terrain. Just to show you how this might change if I use a different terrain. So I'm just going to remove this layer here. I'm going to add a layer back in. Let's use this grass here, grass moss layer. And let's go ahead, and this one is set to 2 by 2, so I'm going to do 25 by 25 again. And you can see how it takes on more of that pattern. So just to show you just how those change based on what you have selected. I'm actually going to maybe take this back to number 2. So let's go back to 2 just to show that back there so everything's consistent. And if we zoom way in here, you can really start seeing how that grass is. So from afar away, this grass is not that great, but as I start zooming in here a lot more, you can see how that texture pattern starts coming out. In fact, if I were to take this same pattern here, let's just go 30 by 30. All right, you can start seeing it starting to pop out of the material just a little bit more here. And so a lot of that's going to depend on how you set this up, what you set your tiling size to. And let me just go ahead and patch those last couple ones here. So let me just go ahead and add in grass B. And I think I just got to do these back to, yes, that's all I got to do. So let me just grab those real quick. That's grass A. I don't want A, I want B. Grass B and grass B. All right, now one thing I want to show here real quick, let's just go zoom in on our grass here real quick here just to kind of get a better feel for some of this. So when I start playing around with this, as I get really close here to see some of these materials, I want to just talk about some of these things. So we have, of course, in here the diffuse, normal, and mask map. This, of course, diffuse is basically just the actual picture that we're looking at. The normal map is the height that is being here added to kind of give the illusion of 3D, because this is basically just a TIFF file that is mapped over this 3D surface. And the mask map is helping that. We also have channel remapping that we can dive into. You have the metallic, the AO, and the smoothness values, and you feel free to play around with those. So if you start playing around with these, you can see how those might change, like some of the lighting and something like that. So I want you to go ahead and just play around with those values, find something that you think it might be cool. One of the things you'll notice with the smoothness, that really starts giving everything kind of like a metallic sheen. So if you wanted to give your world kind of like a epoxy kind of look here, like, oh, look at this world here is kind of, you can do that. And so you can play around with things to kind of give it different views and different feels. But I think I'm going to just leave those values there for now. I just want you to know that they do exist, that you can play around with them. Now, to actually start getting some layers here, and again, I zoomed in just so we can get this. We, of course, had this grass layer. I'm just going to hit add layer. And let's just go ahead and right here we have this black sand. We, of course, also have some pebbles and soil rocks. Looks like we have these other layers. So maybe I want to choose something. Maybe let's just do, how about, we'll just stick with the black sand here. And so now that I've added this as a layer here, you can notice my brush, of course, is pretty small here. So let's bring that brush size up so we can see this. Maybe not quite that, but let's go about 50 on my brush size. And if I start painting this now with this, one thing you'll notice is that it starts painting over top of that area that was just on. Now that paint, of course, if you notice, is very small. It's because our size, again, is set to 1 by 1. Let's make that 30 by 30. And boom, you can see how much bigger that pops out. Now that looks pretty large there, so maybe we wanted to go, let's say, 20 by 20, and you can see how that changes there in the scale of some of that. It's pretty detailed, actually. So let's go 10 by 10. There we go. And that's just something that we can kind of play around with if I don't like that black sand look there, because you can see there's a lot of really large rocks. That's okay, because we can add additional layers on top of this. So this might be something that's really good maybe for some of the tops of some of these mountains here. So as I start coming through and start painting some of these here, it allows me to start brushing these up pretty quickly. And you can see how quickly I can start going in and start adding detail to some of these different things. Without getting too crazy here with all my different things, let's go ahead and just add in our other things that we might want. So for example, maybe I want to put in some of this rock terrain here. And maybe I'm going to want some, let's see what else we got. We got some, looks like snow terrain. We're definitely going to want that for our mountains. And I'll just do one more. Let's just say we want to, let's see, tidal pools. Let's see, mud. Do we have mud? No, we do not. Let's use that. We'll use that maybe for like our valleys there. Now, one thing I want to point out is that I've created this here for this particular palette that I'm on. If I go back to my starting terrain, for example, you see that is no longer there. And that's because terrain palettes are unique to whatever palette you're currently working on. But there's a way that we can transfer this so I don't have to go through and adjust all these settings each time. So let's first look at each of these terrains here. Make sure they're set to 30 by 30. So this one's 10 by 10. I'm going to change it back to 30 by 30. Let's go to our rock terrain. That one's 4 by 4. I'm going to make that one about 32 by 32. I'm just going to make that a nice reference there. And let's do here 30 by 30. And muddy. And again, we can change these later. So right here, you'll see there's an option to save this list into a palette. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that save and save that into my terrains folder. I'm when you see I get an error, it says no layer found, create a new one. So let's make sure that these are all selected here. So I'm just going to make sure these are all turned on. Save that one more time. And let's go ahead and save this. All right, so again, let's go ahead and click on Save As here. We get a pop-up asking us to put into our terrains folder. And let's just call this, instead of new, let's just call this the default layer. And so now that that is taken care of, we now have that saved in there. And what I can do now is I can go back to my other terrains here. I can actually remove this out of here. And then we can actually, from here, change this to none. And if I change it back to the default, it'll say, hey, load the palette. Yes, I want to load the palette. And you can see now it has those in there. And so I can do that actually with all my other ones. So I'm just going to go here, hit none. I'm going to click on the default. It's asking me to load. And bam, now I have access to all of those. And so let's just go ahead and clean that up for each of these here. So go ahead and click on none. And then click on default. That's just a way to kind of clear out the residual settings that might be kind of hanging on to those terrains. And that's going to be a nice quick way for us to get access to everything that we want here. But I want you to go ahead and do that. And then once you loaded this for each of your terrains, I want you to go ahead and actually start painting. So for example, as you know, we currently have 5 different things that I've selected. You, of course, might have different choices. But from here, you can choose, for example, hey, you know, I have a snow layer. I want to make sure that there's snow on the very tops of my mountains. Well, now you have the ability to do so. So let's just go ahead and do that real quick. I'm just going to go ahead. Let's go to my starting terrain here. And I'm just going to go ahead and this one right now, notice, oh, I don't have my default layer on that one. So let me just grab that again real quick. Boop. There it is. And so let's go ahead and grab that snow layer there. And I'm just going to go ahead and start painting that on here for this snow layer. And so let's paint that on. May want to check my brush size here and stuff. Maybe look at my strength and everything. There we go. And so we can actually start painting that snow on, just like we've done with all of our other layers. And so that's going to give us the ability to start adding these on here. Now you notice it doesn't seem to be showing up, so I might have to actually change it in the order of where it's being presented. And you notice, boom, oh my goodness, that's a lot of snow here. So that's something we'll have to kind of keep in mind as we start painting this, because as we start doing certain things, you'll notice how they get presented through. So for example, if I put the rock layer on top, there's the rock layer. If I put the grass layer on top, there's the grass layer. So these are, again, things that we have to kind of keep in mind as we start painting things. If we are working with different pieces of this, how they start coming through with the different pieces of the palette. So you might just have to change your ordering here just a little bit, just to kind of get those through. And it's okay if you don't make everything perfect on the first go. You can play around with it, try and get your peaks the way you want them to be. I'm not going to worry about perfection just because this is more for me for teaching this particular topic. But as you go through it and you start saying, hey, you know, I really wish I had XYZ here, on my different terrains and stuff like that, you of course have that ability to do so, and you're more than welcome to come in and modify your terrains as you see fit. But I think this is going to be a good point to leave us here, and you're again can go ahead and start playing around with this, start finding the things that really make your terrain start to kind of stick out. I think I'm going to like some of these things, such as the rocky pieces here, just so they can kind of start blending through here, so we don't have nothing but just a bunch of grass. But the most important thing I want to leave you with is that as you start putting these together, you're going to want to find the terrains that blend the most for you. So for example, like I have this rocky pieces here that the snow is coming in around, but I might want to use things such as the black sand to come in here and kind of break up maybe some of that along the bottoms here to kind of show a transition in height and stuff like that. Maybe leave some of that grass there in the bottom, but then maybe also maybe add a little bit of mud. I'm actually going to take my brush size down for that, and maybe just a little bit of mud maybe near the bottoms and stuff like that too. So again, this is all stuff that you can play around with. I'm not going to again worry too much about the actual visual presentation because this is for me more of a teaching tool than anything else. But you're welcome to go ahead and make your game in whatever style that you think is going to be most appropriate here. So as you start diving into this and start making your game, I look forward to seeing what you actually create.